First agenda item would be review and potential approval of the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes as circulated?
Yes.
Are there any questions, corrections, additions?
I move we approve the minutes.
And I would second that. Is there any discussion regarding that? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Minutes are approved. All right. Thank you. All right, Julie, certification of voting systems and e-poll books, 2/10/2021. Tell us what that is, please.
Yep, so this is, we have to certify every year with VSTOP and with the state our inventory of all e-poll books and voting machines, which we have done. You have in your packet the actual signed IEC 22 that's been signed by all of you and has been submitted. So this is just letting you know that's been done.
And we have to certify that even though we might be getting new equipment?
Yes, well, we even had to do it on a non-election year.
All right.
So.
I understand. West Lafayette City Council appointment, what is that?
Just to let you know that on February 16th, the Republican caucus was held to fill the West Lafayette City Council District 6 vacancy due to death of Norris Wang. And so Dr. Jeffrey Brown was appointed.
Dr. Brown?
No relation to Tracy Brown.
All right. No, all right. And that's just an FYI?
Yes, and so in your packet you have the CEB4, that's a certificate of appointment.
All right.
For him.
Late annual report filings. Tell us what that is, please.
So the staff has been working hard trying to figure out who needs to do what's still late, and you've been given a list of missing filings, though Jerry Reynolds just turned his in, so that one is done. Defective ones, and then also ones that filed late. I will say so we did send out reminders in advance several times, and not to everybody, though. Understand that there's no way that I've got emails for every single person that might still have an open campaign. So what I did was grab emails that we had from candidates from 2020 and elected officials, and I sent it out. My first email I gave them the right day, but I gave them the wrong date. I gave them the 21st, it was due the 20th, and so I don't want to hold especially anybody accountable that didn't hand it until the 22nd because of my first reminder had the wrong number. The second reminder was corrected. The staff has gone through these with a fine-tooth comb, and like I said, there are some issues. There's a couple
Well, I'm seeing a list that includes Jerry, but Jerry's filed his.
Yeah, he filed it today.
And so we have
it's
two
got
others.
late filing, yes.
And then we have a defective, incorrect filing. And so we really, I guess we're thinking about 3 that haven't filed proper reports. Is that correct?
Well, actually what we have is Nick DeBoer, we don't have. The RDP PAC has never been amended, so that's not actually that's not an annual report. It's their CFA 1 that they need to redo because John Dennis made it public that he's no longer the chairman of that, but we've never received a new CFA 1 stating who is. So and they've been, every phone number on there, the staff says they've called. They've tried to contact people on all of these. I still think, Mike?
Yes, ma'am.
Aren't we missing, there's 2 that borrowed money from their...
Yes, there's 2 candidates that borrowed money from themselves. I don't think it got to this list, though, because I didn't know if you wanted to take that up today.
Oh, well, it should be on defective. There are 2 others that have had an issue since 2019 that's never been corrected.
Isn't the real problem the idea that we're supposed to be imposing some type of a civil fine or penalty for each day that these folks don't submit their reports?
For late filings, for CFA 4s, it is shall impose a fine of $50 up to $1,000, $50 a day, up to $1,000.
And didn't we look at this about a year ago and decided that we were going to do what we believe the law requires us to do and hold people's feet to the fire and make them do this, or otherwise impose a fine. I think they call it a civil penalty. All right? And that was pre-COVID, correct?
Yes.
And then everything, kind of the wheels sort of fell off society for a while, and we just, did we eventually do anything last year?
No.
All right. And in the past, we've never really done this or assessed a civil penalty. Is that correct?
That's correct.
To your understanding, and that would be my understanding, Joe, Ken, I don't remember that we've ever done it.
In my tenure, I don't think we've ever done it.
And I mean, your tenure and Ken's tenure goes back a little further than mine, and so we've not done this in the past. And so I take it this is an effort to compel people to comply with the law.
They need to know the seriousness of the law. I do want to say that, there are some things, so we did send out reminders even afterwards, phone calls, all kinds of things, and those are actually courtesy. We don't have to do that. These responsibilities should fall on the candidate. We try to give them all the information. We tell them what website to go to. However, I wouldn't mind doing more. I mean, I would love to have a candidate class yearly at the least that kind of helps people along. I mean, I know that sometimes we take people by the hand way too much, and people do need to be responsible, but I also I think this is something that we should do. People want to know anyways how to be a candidate, and just something I'm sharing you my thoughts.
Isn't part of this a problem with the fact that some candidates are not regulars? They might do this once or twice and they just plain don't know, and I take it that's why we call, we tell them and invite them, and most people comply. But I see at least two individuals or entities that we've apparently done what we can to encourage them to do what the law requires. Let's look at the back end of this. When would we think our next meeting would be?
I think we should meet at least in a month because we're going to have to make a decision about e-poll books.
All right. And that's later on in the agenda, isn't it?
We won't be talking about e-poll books today. I mean, we could as in new business maybe slightly, but we don't have all of our surveys together yet, so we can't discuss it in full.
What does the board think about potentially tabling this issue with the understanding that in the meantime that the office staff would be sending one last email, if we have a good email on them, and no less than one USPS letter to let them know that if they don't do this, at the next meeting, we'll be considering implementing the civil penalty.
We have on the people that filed late, and I'm assuming that these people were contacted and they all responded and did what they were supposed to do. They just did it late. Is that accurate?
Yes, they did that because they were contacted by staff.
I'm not inclined to do much about that, if anything. This is public notice, and I don't know. I mean, they did it, and that's the bottom line. Just say on some of the others, we did impose a fine. I'm reluctant to start a daily fine, but they just say we just symbolic $50. How much effort are we going to then require somebody or some entity to do to collect it?
Well, we could hire a collection attorney.
For
And that's being
$50?
somewhat, that's being a little flippant, I understand. And I understand, as a practical matter, that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
The statute says you do this, and when you do this, it's a real sinkhole for us to try to enforce it from a goodwill point of view of these candidates who decided to run, and for us to try to, from an economic point of view, to make this happen.
And
Is it a really important thing to get the piece of paper? The $50 is a fine, and the statute says that what's most important is to have the report, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and it's $50 a day, so we could make some real money off of this.
well,
I'm being facetious again.
Would it be interesting to know, are there any other counties around close? anywhere in the state of Indiana that
The
actually collect
the
that
state-
money?
Howard does.
Pardon?
Sir, Howard and Montgomery both do.
Do they?
And
Yep, and
the state does too, and they post it. So this list, now what we did do last year, 2019, 2020, we posted a list of who were late filings on the door, which the state literally puts theirs on their website, and they're assessed a fee. And I feel with COVID and everything, I'm hoping maybe we could suspend the fee, but I think we need to at least follow the law going forward.
Well, certainly going
Impose
forward.
a fine and suspend it, is that?
It doesn't say you can't. I mean, we've looked at this before, and it's been a ongoing problem that just needs to be addressed, and it just plain needs fixed. So maybe what Joe suggested is the idea that, we give them whatever notice, and then we take a look at this again at our next meeting. That's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, I heard the person that came in today, and I just heard part of the conversation, but it was something he didn't feel he had to do because like he had $5 in his account, and and so, I mean, I feel that person was trying to do what is right, and I don't feel the need to sanction.
And that's why I think it's important. We just plain give them notice, and it's not like we're going to be sending the sheriff out to collect the cash from them. So would that be agreed?
Yes.
Please show that in the minutes, Julie, if you would. Thank you. Vote Center Plan Update. Don't we do that every year?
Well, no, actually, we do updates, but we're talking literally the entire plan.
All right.
The entire plan that is on the website of Indiana Election Division was a pilot plan. It is completely outdated. The whole thing needs to be redone. So what I'm telling you on the update is that you are going to receive draft copies, and that will be another thing that we'll have to go over and approve so we can remove the one on the state website and implement a new one. And so this isn't just about vote centers. It's literally the entire plan of running elections.
So maybe after it's close to 20 years that we've had Vote Center County, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So maybe after about 20 years, we think we ought to update that?
Uh-huh,
All right.
very much, yes.
Be sure that, that we have that and distributed well in advance so everybody and all the stakeholders can speak to it, and particularly the two parties.
Are we thinking of doing a proposed plan and then circulating that as part of this process?
Sir, as the plan itself, you're not locking yourself into locations or vote centers or anything like that.
Right.
It's the minutia of actually how the vote centers get conducted, the diagrams for the layouts of the places, the titles of the officers and stuff like that. It's the equipment
Yeah.
that we use, and we're way ahead. We're generations ahead. We're getting new equipment. So it's something that needs to be done for clarification and to meet statutory requirement.
And who's getting to do that?
I get to.
That's what I thought. All right. And so it's time, and it needs looked at, and hopefully, I mean, the minutia and the details are what they are, but we have to respect
Yes,
all
sir.
that. And it doesn't set the times. I mean, we deal with that sometime in, about late August, early September of election years. So, all right. Okay. Anything further on that, Julie?
No,
Acquisition of new e-poll books. Why would we be thinking about that? We bought new ones a couple years ago, didn't we?
well, yeah, we didn't buy them, we got them for free.
Oh, okay, even
2019,
better.
we got free e-poll
Even
books.
better. Are we thinking
And-
more free stuff again, or what?
That is right. We have put in for a grant for these, but we will be asking, we have found we may need more things depending on which one we use. But Mike is working on gathering all the information from the surveys, and we still have some phone calls to make to different counties that use them. We also want to talk to a county that got rid of the VR systems to find out why, and before we make that decision and bring that to you.
So, and I think
I think
everyone
everybody
here
on the
was
board,
there.
did you do the survey?
and-
I haven't
and-
done a survey, I need to do a survey.
All right. So Julie, would you want to explain at the meeting here generally what you just said in a more expansive way so that people know what we're thinking about as far as replacing our e-poll books?
So we have an opportunity to get some money from a grant to replace e-poll books. Being that we now have new election machines, the e-poll books that we have right now are not compatible. You can't use them. And we're pretty sure Votech has no interest to continue any work in Indiana. And so we're looking at 2 different systems, VR systems and no ink, to go with our microvote election equipment. And they came and did a demonstration, and we've done it with people here in the county and some outsiders that work at the polls and are very familiar with the machines. And we'll gather that information and continue to make some calls. And then we're hoping that we will make a decision before Memorial Day, because that's when we would like to submit to the state for the new e-poll books.
So what I'm hearing, and we have new equipment, actually, we don't have it in our possession yet, but as I understand, we received a state grant for that new election equipment.
Yeah, that's on the
And
next.
that's a microvote system.
Yes, on our next line, I was
But
going to give you an
that's kind of
update.
merge these two then.
Okay.
So we have a new system that doesn't cooperate with our existing e-poll book. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
And the poll book that we presently have will not be back up for certification.
Oh, really?
Right. They haven't initiated the certification
All of
process.
them have to be certified this year, all e-poll books. And
Right,
so
yeah.
Votech's not even,
They haven't
Not gonna
filed
bother.
paperwork to do it.
All right. So, and there's a grant pending we've requested, is that correct? All right. So it's not something in front of the county council?
right.
All right.
Well, parts of it might be, so we have to keep that open.
And there's, other than the e-poll books, there's some ancillary equipment that we think is going to be necessary?
Yes.
All right.
So with I wanted to give an update, though, on the microvote election system, because we don't have it here. And what's going on is we're waiting on the certification for new cases. So the state have not certified those cases yet. So we're thinking maybe by August that will be done. Units are actually back ordered, and we're looking at mid-April that we might receive those
Mid-April of 20?
this year.
Okay,
this
good,
year.
because I'm thinking, don't we have an election next year?
And then VPATs they already have, they're just sitting in a warehouse waiting for
right.
everything to come together.
All right, all right.
So August the latest is what,
Election this year.
No election this year, but next year.
yeah, we definitely, so we don't want to get rid of anything until we have everything.
So is that our backup plan?
Yes, it is. But it would be a problem with e-poll books that aren't certified. So we're really pushing this. I call them at least every other month to make sure what's going on. So I think by September, I'm hoping we will know exactly the full system from election equipment to the e-poll books by September.
Any questions about that process? We addressed microvote. Anything further about that? Poll worker survey, what's that?
So Mike sent out a survey to all of our poll workers. Now, not everybody responded, but he really got some neat data I'd like him to share with you. So he's done a PowerPoint.
Mike, you're on. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a little bit of a deep dive into the election that we just had. I want to talk a little bit about the places and the people, and and the registration numbers here. Tippecanoe County for the last election had 119,357 registered voters, and I want to talk about how that compares. The Census Bureau estimates there are 144,000 possible voters in the county. That means 82.8% of the possible voters are registered. So 1 in 6 that are eligible aren't registered to vote in this county. So that's a little bit of a statistic. We might have to think about some kind of outreach. There are 4.7 million registered voters in the state of Indiana per the Secretary of State. So comparatively speaking, we run about 12 percentage points behind the state. Statewide, almost 95% of those eligible are registered. And again, we have about 82.5 registered in this county that are eligible. As far as our service points and our deep dive here, we outpace most of the state. We had 31 election day and early vote centers here in our county, and that's a nice number. We hosted 20 vote centers on election day in November itself. That's 1 per every 6,000 registered voters, roughly. The Indiana code requires only 1 per 10,000, which would ideally, by the statute, we would only need 12. So we do definitely overachieve in meeting our public's needs. In the 2020 general election, we held early voting in 11 locations, and that was due to COVID limitations, as you are aware. The last presidential, we did have 22, which may be a little too high. Indiana code requires 3 under our plan. So again, we are really doing our due diligence and our effort, giving maximum effort to making sure we reach all the folks. We provided 705 total contact hours. People had 705 different hours that they could come vote. And I remember back in the day, when we started, we thought 12 was long. And now 705 is not enough for some folks. But I think that's significant because we do make a huge effort in this county compared to others. A little bit of another part of 2020 that's interesting, we continued, of course, with our early voting and vote centers, even in the midst of COVID. We did it. We managed to find ways with personal protective equipment and staff training and additional training for the folks that were our volunteers. We continued with our TSX machines, which was hopefully our last year for those. Something new we tried an absentee ballot drive-through drop-off, which I thought was pretty successful and I thought was a good outreach. I'd be interested in continuing that if the statutes allow. I think something borrowed, I think it's worth mentioning that longtime GBS rep Kyle Conrad is retiring, and he certainly gave us decades of excellent service here in this county, and he will be missed on election night, that's for sure. Something blue, of course, we dealt with COVID all year long and had to make all kinds of adjustments and arrangements, but we had excellent cooperation from our voting sites, and we had a remarkable effort from our poll workers. Let's talk a little bit about our poll workers here in this county because we stand out. Who are our workers? Compared to nationwide, our workers are tremendously remarkable. We had 238 different folks working in the fall, and that's a lot of folks to schedule and to manage and to train. Comparatively speaking to the nation, we definitely stand out nationwide. 2/3 of the folks that work the polls, according to MSN, are women. In this county, it's about 50-50 with a slight edge going to the men. So that's an interesting statistic. We have about an even representation, and that pretty much actually reflects our census data. So that's nice that we have that kind of balance. And I think also, statistically speaking, we are an anomaly with age. We are about backwards to the Pew Research that indicates that about 2/3 of the folks are over 40 that work the polls nationwide, including over half being over the age of 61. Think of that, over half the folks that work nationwide are over the age of 61. And it's backwards in this county because roughly half are under the age of 40 here.
Mike, do you think that's part of the outreach that we've done through the high schools?
I think a lot of that, and and the good relations we have with Purdue, and yes, and I think that we do a good job of also word of mouth referrals. These people come in, they find excitement, and they tell their friends like that. So, but yes, it's remarkable that we have a better distribution of ages, which is much more representative of what the general population is also. And in the last year, how this played out, with the scare of COVID, it's the demographic fit very well because, we weren't using people that were in the high-risk groups. But this is not just last year. As a rule of thumb, this is the way we trend in this county. But I think across the board, part of it's our recruitment and the engagement of the office and both the parties, both the Democrat and Republican parties, help tremendously in engaging workers. Ethnicity pretty much reflects our county demographic. This is a big issue with some folks. We pretty much square up. We're just slightly overrepresented in Caucasian, but we pretty much do square up with what our county looks like. I feel it's very important, and the rest of the staff does too, that the election workers reflect what the county looks like. I think that we need to continue to make efforts to recruit folks from all walks of life and from all backgrounds so people feel comfortable when they come to the polls. They see somebody that is like them at the polls, and I think that is a big thing to having comfort and trust in the system, is to have folks working the polls that look like the people going to vote. That's about all I'll say on that. Educational attainment in this county, compared to the nationwide statistics as far as people who participate in the polls, we have over half the folks that work for us have a college degree of some kind. And I think that's extremely significant. That's helpful because the technology we handle, people have a better grasp of the fundamentals of the law and processes. It makes training easier. I think this also helps us in directing where our training goes and how to present things. So it's really neat that nationwide, the average average person that would work the polls, 33% of them only have a high school diploma. But again, this county, we have a higher educational attainment rate overall, demographically speaking, but particularly we do in our poll workers. That also is significant in that these folks are giving up, a significant amount of their days and time to donate this time, and I think that's really, we're not talking about a bunch of retirees. We're talking about a lot of actively employed people that donate to us their time. I know we pay them, but when it's all said and done, they're actually pretty much giving up. Number of time served this year, 46% were rookies and 54% had worked at some point in time in the past. 22% of the folks had worked more than 5 times for us, which is nice to have that cadre of leadership there and folks that have experience to be able to train other people. And how do these people come to serve? 43% of the people identified them that they just have a personal interest or personal initiative, that they consider themselves self-motivated in coming forward. Other significant things were about 15% were recruited by board staff, about 13% by a political party, and about 14% were recruited by another election worker. So in the remaining, there was the high school program, of course. Some people were doing it because of a college assignment, and then some were recruited by an advocacy group like the League of Women Voters or Purdue Votes. But most of the people identified when asked that they just did it because of their own personal interest, which I conjecture, there's a high level of civic responsibility and civic engagement in this county. Our election workers were asked to rate their experience on a 10-point scale. They gave us an 8.9, which I think is pretty nice. We'll always try to do better, but I don't think that's bad. When they were asked if they would work again, 90% said yes. So I think that's the telltale thing. So only 2% said no, and the rest were, of course, maybes. But 90% of the people would be willing to serve again, so that's nice. So Tippecanoe County election workers do skew much younger and with more education than the national average, and we have a much higher proportion of men than most jurisdictions, to summarize. So that's kind of what our folks look like that serve us. And that's a little bit about how many points of service that we did have. I've got a lot more information if you're interested. You can send me some email. I have statistics about turnout and demographics as far as that is concerned. And of course, we have the projections for the future. Things we're facing, we're waiting on census data, which is delayed probably till August. We would usually, in this year, decennial year, be already working on re-precincting and helping with redistricting. We also have a new area plan director, Mr. Hiddle. Sally Dell won't be involved with it this year, so this will be a first with him too. So, but that work awaits us, so that's what the future holds for us. Do you have any questions about this?
I have one question. On the potential voters and then the actual registered voters. Does Purdue play into that? Basically, students who do not live in Indiana, they're counted as potential voters, but they don't register here because they're going to vote in their home state.
That could very well play out.
The highest saturation rates of registration tend to be in our rural townships. Union and Perry have nearly 98% people that are eligible to vote, registered to vote. And Wabash would be low. Yeah, I think Wabash has 76. So I think that does play. I think, but there are still pockets of the county, particularly in the urban area, north end of Lafayette, they have a lower registration rate than the county average also.
So I want to thank Mike for all the work he put in this, because this was really interesting data. This is a lot of data that other counties do not collect. And I found it interesting, and it also gives us some insight on what maybe we can go another direction. So just thank you, Mike, for all that work.
Yeah, Mike, particularly well done. I mean, let's face it, it's the kind of thing that, I mean, you can watch and understand, and it tells us where we are and suggests that we are doing a good job managing our election workers. And I know you did much, if not most of that. Thank you.
But you know, one of the great things about our county and the community we live in is that we have people willing to step up, and we have this really high level of engagement in this county, and people want to be part of the system. And I tell folks, in training, there's only really two ways that you're directly participating in the government, and that's either if you're called for jury service or if you're serving at the polls. And this is your chance to be part of government for a day.
Well, 2020 was certainly the year that people needed to step up.
And they did.
And they did. And again, and some of you folks have heard this before, but the voters stepped up too.
Yes, they did.
And took advantage of in-person early voting. And I'd hate to have guessed what Election Day would have been like if we would have had to count all those 10,000, 11,000 absentee ballots and people hadn't surrendered them and voted in person. We would have gotten that done, but it would have been a little rougher. Any other comments on the poll worker survey? Purdue Election Observation Project.
So this is another group that did a great job. Purdue, with Dr. Dietz' class in the Purdue Polytechnic Institute, they had 7 students, I believe, that came, and they observed. Some of them worked that were registered voters. The others they observed, and they presented to us a report, I don't know, about 50 pages. They did a lot of hard work, and I would like them, there's 2 of them here. You have Dr. Dietz here, and then Kresimir.
Do we want to invite them to come forward and give us the highlights on that?
Yes,
I mean,
there's
I've
a
reviewed that.
microphone
I know we made
right
it
over
available,
here.
And gentlemen, if you would just identify yourselves for the record.
Yeah, my name is Eric Dietz. I've been a resident in the community for about the last 16 years after my retirement from the military. The project here really extended from Homeland Security work that I have been doing here in the community since my retirement. Many of the tools that we use to try to measure security work are really common and are leveraged, I think, that we tried to leverage towards actually measuring the election process. So we started out looking at measuring events, large security events like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I've had students that actually have gone down as a class project that we went down and helped improve security and processing rate at the Speedway. Some small changes we made actually doubled the effectiveness of staff with some of the races that have happened down there. We've been working with the Pacers. We've worked with Purdue football and internationally with trying to use some of these measurement tools. I talked with Julie and Tracy Brown before the election and thought this might be a good opportunity as a class project to explore actually using our elections with some of the uncertainties we had this year. Certainly COVID was a significant uncertainty, and some of the unrest we had during the summer caused us great concern with how well this might work. So I'm going to ask Krasi to perhaps offer some of the insights that we found, and then I'll maybe talk just for a moment afterwards about maybe some of the things we might do next.
Thank you, Dr. Dietz. Thank you. So we did have observers in 4 locations, and collected a lot of statistics around the process. We also conducted some computer simulations, and we have some recommendations of how we could potentially improve the flow of people through the election process. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
The computer modeling tools we use actually allow us to measure and monitor resources that might be voting machines, people, process, and try to look for optimization steps. So we look for those sort of hang-ups in the system that might allow these things to run more smoothly. And the computer tools we use, we can actually look to try to see what would happen if we added staff, if we added voting equipment, if we added training. Some of the things we've found by looking at working, frankly, with the county in the past on pandemic planning. As a class project over the last decade, we've done pandemic planning exercises with the county that have helped throughput and helped identify a number of weaknesses we had with the points of distribution. We might think of those now as CVS and Walgreens and the Kroger stores with getting our shots, but we've actually worked with those processes for many years. Again, these same tools apply with election processing and looking at improving through rate and throughput. So a couple of things that we would like to at least offer as ideas that we might seek future partnerships, perhaps with my classes and perhaps with others in the county, would be things like running an exercise that we could do off-election, off-season as an election exercise that we might collect other data, better understand what tools and resources that you all need to provide. And we could also look at training. One of the most significant problems that we've seen, whether we've looked at Indianapolis Motor Speedway or pod exercises, is the inadequacy sometimes of some of the training. Not because we don't do it well, but sometimes the subjects are not necessarily ready to show up and absorb everything that we think we are telling them and they need. So one of the training tools we've used, we've called just-in-time training. And the just-in-time training we might think of as just YouTube videos. Some of my class projects, we actually have students preparing such videos, 3 to 5 minute videos that maybe the more tech savvy that we have, our kids or our grandkids, would be able to do for their smartphones. We don't necessarily need a studio or anything very fancy with this. Just a simple computer or a simple tablet or a smartphone is sufficient to be able to make a short video that helps try to communicate some of the key components, whether it's troubleshooting election equipment, which we saw some of that, how to get Wi-Fi signals and passwords reassembled, some of those kinds of events. Some of the security things we've done and COVID kind of research that we've done too, I think could be applicable. We do understand, I think all of us are following COVID, the protocols, the masks, but the 1918 pandemic lasted into the 1920s that we still saw peaks. So we've got to expect that this pandemic, regardless of shots and masks and other mitigation techniques that we've used, is going to be, there's a lingering tail that will probably be with us for a couple of years to some degree that we have to deal with. So pandemic and disease may be an ongoing problem that we have. Some of the security events could be an ongoing problem. And for public safety, the main tool that we use for trying to improve that would be the exercise process. And that exercise process is basically like running the drills before game day, and the ability to do that perhaps with, again, my classes, other classes in town, maybe even government classes in some of our high schools might be an opportunity to allow us to have mock elections that could actually train the students, or train the system, better understand our training issues, and also look at some of these modeling tools that we might look for efficiency. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or Krasi.
I do want to comment. So we talked, last time we talked, we talked about training, mock election I wasn't sure about. So I did, because we don't have equipment yet, but I did contact the company. They said absolutely they could come out here, we could do a mock election with what they have now, which I think would be great, not only for seeing how well it can run, but to bring in outsiders. That this is a new machine that we're presenting. It would be a great opportunity for voters if they feel uncomfortable. People don't like change, to get some, at least, to see the new equipment and try it. So that is a possibility, and probably in the fall would be, the best time. So I think we ought to plan on that. And you guys said signage, and then remember, TEMA has these great big signs that we should be using for elections, that we can put them like in the corner of Ivy Tech. These are all things that the class brought up to us.
Yeah, we know from other exercises, your county health department has a large number of signs. Emergency management has some signage and other materials. So it would seem prudent to try to leverage some of those other resources, since if something goes wrong, we probably do have an event that might cause concern for them. Be much better to make sure that we try to alleviate some of that up front. I also teach a summer class. In the past, we've done, as I said, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Pacers have offered opportunities to do security. Last year, because of COVID, we continued the class, but we just did campus kind of activities. So summer might even be an opportunity to have a handful of students continue to explore this, Julie. And I've got a class project right now that I anticipate will come up with a few of the concepts for how these exercises might run. I would suggest the exercises could include things like what happens when a poll worker has to deal with somebody who actually voted absentee, when your polling books tell you that they voted. Some of those kind of routine problems need to be handled more routinely, especially if you have sort of a bumper turnout and have reduced or compressed days and hours that these problems present themselves.
Any questions? Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you very much,
Well done.
both of you.
Unfinished new business. Anything on that agenda? We don't set a meeting. Tell us when we think we might be having a meeting to talk further about e-poll books, Julie.
Well, I'd like to do 30 days next month.
All right, but you'll just give us a heads up, notify the public accordingly when we have a date.
And let me remind, because Jackie's new, so Jackie, be sure that you go on to the website for Tippecanoe and sign up for the Board of Elections emails. So whenever we post anything, that will be emailed to you. Okay.
Any other new business, unfinished, old business?
Oh, you know what? We do have new business we need to bring up.
Certainly.
This is about Shadeland. So I think, I know. So we.
No, it's not painful.
So, yeah, but we knew, I think in 2019 when I came in, and I'm new, so I'm really digging into when do certain elections occur, and theirs was not matching what we had for their bylaws. So I've asked Mike to do some really deep digging, and so Mike, if you could share what we found, what you found.
Just through a combination of errors, and of course, consent implies approval, because, these people are already serving, so don't know how it happened, but in previous times, we have voted them backwards. They have some that should be districts and some that should be elected at large. They've struggled with the small population of Shadeland to maintain their districts, and they've redistricted, reduced the number of districts, things like this. So finally, through conversations with the clerk treasurer, Charlene Brown, we've drafted an ordinance for them to abolish their districts, and they're just going to elect all their representatives at large. The council, the board doesn't need to take any kind of action to approve or disapprove this. It's just, we just take notice that their board is going to intends to switch from having some district representation to a completely at large. They've struggled at times. The census data won't be in this year. There's a lot of different reasons to do this. They're also the only municipality in this county that's off cycle with us. The rest of the folks are on what we call the municipal cycle. I'm aware of why this was done. It was to save them money, because any municipality that is not on its own cycle, if there's a countywide election, they don't have to reimburse the election board for any kind of expenses.
Well, but my understanding is when they did it in the middle of this cycle, and they waited it, they should have ran in the next cycle, which would have been halftime.
Right.
And they went 4 years, which ended up in the middle of the cycle where it should have been, and they really should be on the cycle that
But
the others.
The present language, yeah, but we can't fix retroactively. But on a go-forward basis, they're going to have to not only repeal the sections of the law of their town code that delineates their districts, which I've helped them get the right ordinance together for that, establish the at-large representation, and then they're going to have to make a determination in their town code exactly which cycle they're on.
And so they're making some progress to do that.
Yes, and at their April meeting, we'll have a first reading of their ordinance, so and I'll go out there to help them.
They should have an attorney, too.
Mary, I
Okay.
will meet with Mary, too, yeah.
Charlene is new. She was appointed last year to replace the other, so she seems to be right on it.
Yes, she is. Yeah. I think she's
She wants to fix it.
and so is the town, and so is the town president, the council president, so.
Again, it's best to stick as close to the law as you can.
Absolutely, sir.
Any other news or old or unfinished business? Move to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Please show that in the minutes. Thank you for attending.